Okay, so he didn't doubt that Hamad knew the answer, but he knew that he didn't know the answer. So she went to Hamad, asked him the question, and Hamad gave the answer, and came back to, gave her the answer, and she came back to him and told him. And then he thought that this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to leave Ahlul Kalam, I'm going to leave this debating, and I'm going to devote myself to fiqh. So now that Abu Hanifa, now that he's entered learning knowledge properly, I just want to mention some of his teachers, because if you look at any great person, you'll see that he'll be inspired by great people who are around him. Maybe these great people won't be mentioned so much. Maybe it's a great characteristic in one person, and one and then another, then another, then another, and all of them come together in this one person. But it's without doubt that you are like your company. And Prophet ﷺ said so as well, obviously in a hadith, that you are like the company that you hang around with, and you will be raised up with the company that you hang around with. It is said that his teachers, they're a humongous number. Okay, some say 44,000, some say less than that. But his teachers, they were a humongous number. Okay, but so inshallah we'll concentrate upon a few of them, and we'll talk about some of the characteristics. So inshallah we can see, so we can learn something from that as well. And just before I carry on, later on in his life, his foremost and the most important teacher was someone called Hamad. Okay, Hamad, he was a recognized faqih in Kufa, as I've already described to you. And Hamad ibn Sulaiman, who died 120 Hijri, he was the main student of Ibrahim an-Nakhai, who gained knowledge from a number of Sahaba, but amongst them the most prominent one amongst them was Abdullah bin Mas'ud. And Ibrahim an-Nakhai. And Abu Hanifa, he says that in total he spent with Hamad 18 years. Okay, but he says about his time with him. He says that basically that initially when I joined him, I would sit with I sat with the newcomers. Okay, but after a little while, Hamad saw that this man, he was gifted. And as all teachers, when they see somebody who's gifted or who spends a lot of energy, they make him come forward. Okay, and he made him sit with the most recognized people. Eventually, Abu Hamad made him sit right in front of him. Okay, and it became known that Abu Hanifa was one of his foremost students. And after 10 years, right? Abu Hanifa, and 10 years is a long time. That's basically 2 medical degrees. 2 MBBSs for those of you who study medicine. He goes that he thought, Abu Hanifa thought that now I've gained enough knowledge. Now it's time for me to start my own circles. Okay, so on that day he comes into the main mosque of Kufa, and there he sees a teacher, Hamad, and he says that when he saw Hamad giving this lecture, he said that I couldn't do it. I just couldn't start my own lecture. No, not now. Not the way he saw. It's something I respect for Hamad. He couldn't do it. So he sat down and he began to listen to Hamad like he always did. And on that very day, he says that one of Hamad's relatives passed away in Basra. Okay, so and Hamad was therefore he had to go to Basra, to deal with this matter of the inheritance, because he was the only one who could deal with it. So Hamad, before he left, he says to Abu Hanifa that you take my place as teacher, and you teach, you take my place. So you see, subhanAllah, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he blessed Abu Hanifa in that something that he wanted to do, he made him do it in a way that was much better than that. And that was to start his own class, but with the permission of Hamad, and also with the supervision of Hamad. Okay, so Hamad, he then goes for roughly 2 months, and people asked him questions. Okay, and whatever question he knew that he heard from Hamad, he'd give the same answer. But he says that people came with him with 60 new questions, and of those 60 questions, and all those 60 questions, he wrote down the question, he wrote down the answer. So that when Hamad came back, he told them about every single one of those 60 questions. And he says that Hamad, he agreed with me with 40, and he disagreed with me in 20. And then he said, then Abu Hanifa said that by that I knew that there was still a lot of knowledge in Hamad that I didn't have. And also he says that, it says with this that sometimes I would go to Basra, right, thinking that I know a lot of stuff, I know a lot of knowledge, Okay, because Hammad was pretty much the main authority in Kufa at the time. And people would be asking questions that he just didn't know. And we'd go back to Hammad, and Hammad would know the answer to these questions. So he knew that Hammad, he still had a lot of knowledge to give. And he remained his student for a further 8 years. In fact, he says that when he came back after this Basra event, he says that he said to himself that I will remain Hammad's student until he passes away. I will remain his student. I don't care. He has more knowledge than me. He's clearly the one who's more superior than me, and I will remain his student. And he remained his student until Hammad passed away, which is 8 years after that. So therefore, which is 120 after Hijri, and therefore he's a student totally for 18 years. So what we can learn from this, the main thing we can learn from this is that to gain the knowledge that Abu Hanifa gained, he wasn't just sitting around. Okay, he was his main student. He was recognized his main student after 10 years, and for a further 8 years he devoted himself for it. So this knowledge, this deen, this inheritance from the prophets is only gained by striving. And he would say afterwards, Abu Hanifa, he would say afterwards, about Hammad when he passed away. And this is something that he would obviously say to teach his students, okay? He would say, Wallahi, ma da'awtu li waliday bil maghfirah illa da'awtu li Hammad. Wa ma dhakartu waliday illa dhakartu Hammada. Which means that I swear to you by Allah that I never made dua for my parents for forgiveness except I made dua for Hammad. And I never remembered Hammad. I never remembered my parents except I remembered Hammad. This was the amount of respect his teacher Hammad he had in the heart of Abu Hanifa. And this also shows you the respect that we need to gain out. We need to give our teachers as well, whoever they are. That they deserve respect because they are more. They have gained this inheritance of the prophets, and especially the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And just to talk about his teacher Ibrahim an-Nakhai, he's also, like I said, he's also one of the recognized scholars, one of the biggest tabi'in, because Abu Hanifa, since he's a tabi'in, but he's one of the late tabi'in by far. Okay, because he was born 80 after Hijri. He just met Anas bin Malik and that was it. Okay, so he's not like the other tabi'in, the early tabi'in who met Sahaba, spent a long time with them, like Imam Hassan al-Basri, Ata bin Abi Rabah, who spent a long time with the Sahaba. Okay, so he's one of the late tabi'in. While Ibrahim an-Nakhai, he was one of the, he's one of the established tabi'in. And he also, when he saw some of the rulers doing unjust acts, and during the early years, people like to think that they were, all the scholars, right, didn't do any rebellions, but this is not true. Okay, Ibrahim an-Nakhai, he's one of those people who revolted against the Khalif of his time. Okay, and Sa'id bin Jubair, he said when the people of Kufa used to come to him asking fatwas, he would say to them that you asked me to give you fatwas and you have with you Ibrahim an-Nakhai. So and also, he was saying basically that basically he's trying to say that you come to me, and Sa'id bin Jubair is a recognized scholar, that you come to me to ask to get fatwas, right? When you have this man Ibrahim, who's he's also a recognized scholar, and he was somebody who used to speak for the truth. And once when he saw one of the amirs walking, very proudly, he said to him right to his face that this is not the way. This is not the way that the Muslims walk, right to his face. And it is said that the fiqh of Abu Hanifa actually comes from Ibrahim an-Nakhai, because Ibrahim an-Nakhai, he's the one who gained knowledge from the Sahaba. So he's the one. So the roots come to Ibrahim an-Nakhai, and from him, Hammad learned his knowledge, and from him Abu Hanifa. Okay, so there's pretty much a direct chain. And Ibrahim an-Nakhai learned his knowledge from a number of scholars. And in fact, once towards the end of Abu Hanifa's time.